You ever have one of those days where things just don't seem to make sense? Well, that was February 20th, 2026. It was a day where if you were watching the news, you'd see nothing but chaos. But if you were watching the markets, you'd see something totally different. So what was really going on? Let's dive in and try to make sense of it.
So when the closing bell finally rang, just look at these numbers. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Dow, they were all in the green, all up. If this was the only thing you saw all day, you'd think, hey, pretty good day. But that's not even close to the full story. In fact, the headlines were telling a completely different tale. And this is the central mystery we're going to unpack today. I mean, you had a government shutdown, a U.S. economy that was obviously slowing down, and really serious threats popping up all over the globe. With all of that bad news, how in the world was the stock market not just holding on, but actually climbing? It's a real puzzle.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to break this all down. We'll look at the seriously mixed signals coming out of Washington, then we'll dig into what was really happening with the economy. After that, we're putting a spotlight on the incredible power of AI, and finally, we'll take a look at why the whole world seemed to be holding its breath. So let's start in Washington, D.C., which on this particular day felt like it had a split personality. You know, on one hand, it was pure gridlock, but on the other, there was some surprisingly decisive action. So check out this contrast. Over here, you've got a partial government shutdown, day 7, with Congress not even in session. Total dysfunction. But then on the very same day, the Supreme Court steps in and makes this huge ruling against the administration's tariffs. What this really tells you is that even when our politics seem completely broken, the underlying system of checks and balances can and does still work. And make no mistake, this shutdown wasn't some abstract political fight. It had real consequences for real people. Think about it. The TSA agents at the airport, the Coast Guard out on the water. These are essential jobs. And 92% of these employees were forced to work without knowing when their next paycheck would arrive. That kind of uncertainty is just brutal.
Okay, so with that political chaos humming in the background, you'd expect the economy to be in trouble, right? Well, the truth is way more complicated. It really was a tale of two completely different data points painting totally opposite pictures.
First up, the big warning sign. The overall economy, our GDP, slowed way down to just 1.4% growth. That's a huge drop from the quarter before. It's kind of like your car was flying down the highway and then suddenly you slam on the brakes. You're still moving, yeah? But that sharp slowdown is definitely a reason to be concerned. But, and this is a huge but, while the broad economy was hitting the brakes, the biggest companies in America were hitting the gas hard. Their profits were up a massive 13.2%. That was the 5th quarter in a row of double-digit growth. It's like your personal income is shrinking, but your retirement account is suddenly exploding in value. It just doesn't feel like it should happen at the same time. And this chart right here, this is the key to understanding why the market was up. For years, as you can see, corporate earnings, that dark blue line, have basically been the engine for stock prices, the light blue line. When earnings go up, stocks tend to follow. And on this day, investors were betting everything on that engine. They believed that even if the rest of the economy was sputtering, the sheer power of corporate profits would be enough to pull everything forward. So, what was fueling that engine? What was the secret sauce making these companies so profitable? Well, the answer, in just 2 letters, was AI. Artificial intelligence wasn't just some tech buzzword anymore. It was a legitimate economic revolution. I mean, just listen to the CEO of NVIDIA, the company at the absolute center of the AI boom. He said demand for their new products was off the charts. That's not just corporate speak. This was a gold rush. Every company, in almost every sector, was scrambling to get their hands on this new technology, and it was creating unbelievable wealth. And these numbers, they're just mind-boggling. Look at this. Wall Street was expecting NVIDIA's revenue to grow by 67% in a single year, and their earnings per share by over 70%. When you see growth like that, it sends a powerful signal, not just about one company, but about an entire technological shift that has the power to lift the whole market.
But of course, it wasn't just about AI chips and earnings reports. While the tech world was dreaming of the future, the rest of the planet was dealing with some very serious risks in the here and now. There was another major story playing out, and this one was filled with tension.
The situation with Iran was basically a powder keg. The president put a timer on it, saying a decision on diplomacy versus a military strike would come in the next 2 weeks. You can just imagine the tension. A military conflict there could send oil prices through the roof and send shockwaves through the entire global economy. Everybody was watching,
and everybody was nervous.
And that standoff with Iran wasn't happening in a vacuum. On that exact same day, you had deadly strikes in Lebanon, drone attacks in Crimea, a horrific attack in Nigeria. It just felt like the world was a tinderbox, with fires popping up everywhere.
So, when you put it all together, what does this one day teach us? It shows that our world is incredibly complex. You can have a slowing economy and political gridlock pulling you down, while at the very same time, the raw power of corporate earnings and technological innovation is pulling you up. And on February 20th, 2026, the forces of innovation, they won.
And it leaves us with this huge question for the future, doesn't it? As technology like AI gets more and more powerful, do the old forces of politics and economics even matter as much? Or are we in a new era where the relentless pace of innovation is the one thing that will always ultimately come out on top?